All right, day 506 of going live. Today, we're adding to our comparable sales list of properties that are coming onto the market in the Birmingham, Alabama market. So let's just show you what I have on the filters right now. Today, I have 4-bedroom homes, single family homes, and properties that have come on the market for less than 3 days. What I'm looking for next is I'm looking for properties that are 4-bedroom plus, and that's how I came around this property, right? It just came on 23 hours ago. And this is 1031 Eastern Valley Road, Bessemer, Alabama 35020. This property is listed for $180,000. It's a 4-bed, 1-bath, 2,000 square feet. Now, very common, I see properties that are 3 1s, maybe 3 2s, and I'm looking for properties that are typically 1,300 square feet or higher. Now, this property works out because it's a 4-bedroom and they are relatively renovated. I mean, this is above average kitchen. It's not like a super modern one, but it's really it's solid, right? I don't think I need to update the flooring in much of the home. Yeah, because I think it's all rental grade already. That's your typical garage if someone's just living there. Okay, great. There you go. So you've been following what we've been doing, right? For the past 12 months, we've noted down all the properties that are coming onto the market, and we note down very similar and just common property statistics across all of the different properties that we've been tracking, which includes bed bath count, the square footage, the year built, the sold price, the price per square foot, the sold date, the lot size, and some general characteristics about the property in your market. In this area, we try to note whether there's a garage, whether there's a basement, and whether or not it's an HOA. Then we note down what subdivision it's in, and we make some general comments about the conditions of the kitchen, the bathrooms, the painting, and the flooring so that we can see cosmetically what is behind it. And obviously, if there's any other comments about whether or not there is plumbing updates that are needed, electrical updates are needed, roofing, water heater, etc., we'll put that in there. But if I can't tell from just the photos, I'm not going to put it in there unless it's in the description. So as I built out the list for the last 12 months, I also started tracking once we've exhausted that list, we start tracking the properties that were sold in the last 3 months. Then we started looking at the properties that have been on the market for just the last 3 to 6 months that are coming onto the market. And the reason we're tracking the properties that are coming onto the market is for a couple of reasons, right? So let's talk about one of the first reasons why we do it. One of the first reasons why we do it is I'm pulling up the chart for the 10-year Treasury yield. So this is the debt that the federal government issues to borrow money. Now, the interest rate that the government pays for the 10-year Treasury yield over the last year has fluctuated between 4.6, 4.7. It's gone down to 3.6-ish, and it's reached back up to its peak of like 4.8 just a couple of weeks ago. Now, here's why it's important, and let's use some numbers, right? Please understand that the 30-year mortgage interest rates are affected by, one, the interest rate of the 10-year yield, which is 4.472 today, and the spread between the 10-year yield and the 30-year mortgage interest rates. And now, historically, that spread has been about 1.5 to 2%, but it's gone as high as 3%. And that's when we saw interest rates in the 8s, and that nearly brought the housing market to a complete standstill. Okay. Interesting, right? So now what you're going to find is if you are using the BRRRR strategy, and the BRRRR strategy is made of 5 elements, which stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. And let's use an example to explain that strategy. Let's say you buy a home for $20,000 and you renovate that home for $50,000, 50. So you're now all in at $70,000, right? 20 to buy it, 50 to renovate it. And now if you're able to make that home worth $100,000, just created $30,000 of equity in between. Now you can go get a debt service coverage ratio loan for 70% of the home's value, which means now you can borrow 70 grand, right? Because the home's worth $100,000. Take out 70 and pull that back out in the form of loan proceeds. So you essentially recuperate all $70,000 that you initially invested with the cash out of your pocket. And now you can take the same 70 grand and use it over and over and over again. That's the power of the BRRRR strategy. Because you can take the same 70 grand and do it over again. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is you save up money for 20% down payment from your full-time job, put that towards your down payment, and hope that the property cash flows or appreciates, and save up money all over again for your next down payment. Now, I'm not saying that's not a good strategy. Tons of people have been very successful doing that. But when you compare that to the BRRRR strategy, it's just not as fast, right? Because the velocity of your capital slows down tremendously because you have to keep leaving capital in those investments instead of pulling them back out. This is why the BRRRR strategy is so popular. But what is the BRRRR strategy dependent upon? It's dependent upon your ARV, your after repair value. So how can you judge whether or not you have the right estimate of the value of the home after your renovations are done to pull back out all your initial invested capital? Because here's what's happening, right? If you're refinancing today, you might be looking at properties that were sold in September and October when interest rates were at the lowest. So that means your monthly payments are lower, which drives up your affordability and drives up the prices that properties are sold for because the willingness to pay is higher. Fast forward to today, right? If you're buying a property today cash, interest rate now are its 12-month high. When interest rates go up, your monthly payment goes up. That drives down your affordability and drives down the purchase prices of your properties because it's less affordable. People are willing to pay less for your property. So that might dramatically affect how much money you can pull back out and how much money you got to leave in the deal. These are all factors that you must consider because now you might say, hey, if I think I'm spending $70,000 and the home's going to be worth $100 grand, with interest rates where it is today, what if that home is only going to be worth $90 grand because of how our interest rates are today? Right? That's one aspect. The other aspect is if you looked at, so what is it? 10-year yield focus. If you've been following what's happening, right? The Treasury Secretary that Donald Trump just appointed says they are focused on the 10-year Treasury yield to lower the borrowing costs, not necessarily what the Federal Reserve is doing. So stop paying attention to all the stuff about Federal Reserve lowering market rates. Does it affect it? Yes. But you have to understand that they are playing a different game and they're trying to affect a 10-year yield, which is hopefully going to drive down borrowing costs. So pay very, very close attention to this. Don't just listen to the mass media. Be the detective, right? Learn what's going on. This is not meant to be political. I'm trying to teach you how to pay attention to what's going on in the market so that you can react appropriately, okay? So for this property, let me add this property to my list. So I'm going to make sure I capture URL of the property, the address of the property, the bed bath count, 4-bed, 1-bath, 2,045 square feet. This property was built in 1945. It's 0.51 acres. This property is listed for $180,000. So on a dollar per square foot perspective, it is being sold for $88 per square foot. It was listed 2 days ago, so listed to $1,525. Carport, not a garage, no basement, no HOA. And what's the neighborhood in it? So let me zoom out on this property. This property is closest to Hopewell, I think, actually. It's like a different area. So in between Bessemer and McCalla. Between Bessemer and McCalla. Great. So now I understand what it is. I'll say above average kitchen and bathrooms. Rental grade. No painting or floor work needed. Great. So now that I have this item in here, right, because I can quickly reference this property next time I have a similar looking property. Because I mean, what's the perfect comp, right? The perfect comparable property would be if I bought this property for cash right next door, and I was using this property for my comparable value, it would have the same bath count, same square footage, same year built, same finishes, same lot size, blah, 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 blah. But that's rare, right? Because typically all houses look different. And as you go across creeks or neighborhoods or big main streets, you're in different neighborhoods. When you go to different neighborhoods, there's a completely different market because the crime might be different, right? But Birmingham is a very street by street type of market. So you got to be very, very careful about all this stuff, okay? Now, the next thing I want to highlight is this. Let's go ahead and analyze this deal as is, right? This property is $180,000. So you can figure out, hey, what set of terms or price would make this a deal, quote unquote, for you? I'm going to delete this multiply by 3 because that was yesterday's scenario. I'm going to go to my rehab calculator on the spreadsheet. Again, I'm setting aside $1,500 for the roof to replace it. I got $500 for some landscaping to keep things tidy while I get rent ready. This property has 2,045 square feet. So I'm going to do equals 2,045 times 0.1. I'm assuming I need to do some touch-up paint on 10% of the home. Like very little, but you should expect something. I'm going to replace the toilet with a high-pressure flush toilet so that I don't get any clogged toilet calls. I am going to put in a cage on the HVAC because I just had one of my HVAC systems get stolen, and that was about $5,000 to replace it. I'm not going to let that happen to me again. I'm only going to spend $900 so that I don't have to worry about the headache. Then I got $4,756 for my rehab. Okay, that flows into right here on B6. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to get my rents. So if I go to affordablehousing.com, I go to the owner section, I go to the market rent estimator, plug in the address, plug in the bedroom count. I can see that right now, whoa, that's a lot higher than I expected. I don't believe this number. Check it out, 1,800. I've never seen properties going for $1,800 for rent. So 35020. Let's go to rent areas. 35020. Whoops, where am I? 35020. Houses for rent. 35020. And you can see right here, we were down towards this area. And if we looked at these homes right here, this is a 3-bed, 2-bath, listed for $1,350. This is a 3-bed, 2-bath. This is a brand new home, so that's not comparable. 2,045. This home's a 3-bed, 2-bath. Let's see what's going on here for 4 bedrooms. There's a home up here, which is probably closer to where, and this is $1,250. This is a pretty solid home. I mean, and 16 square feet. So I might do $1,400 for rent because I just don't believe that this home is going to rent for $1,800. I've been looking at this market every single day, and I just don't see it. Now, let's see what happens if it is $1,800, okay? Let's do $1,400 for now because that's the rent I typically see for 4-bedroom properties in this area. But I'll show you what the numbers look like if it's $1,800, okay? Just give me a second. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to put in my taxes, which is just $58. Always double check with your county assessor records before you close. And my home insurance is $139. So I'll do equals 139 times 1.2 because I'm assuming the insurance company is going to view this as a riskier asset because you're using it as an investment property. And I'm assuming that 139 number right here is for a primary residence property. Then I got 10% set aside for my maintenance every single month in B32. And this is because I know that the roof is going to get replaced at some point, right? The water heater, the HVAC is going to get replaced at some point. Something will always come up. So you have to set aside this money right now because otherwise you're going to be overestimating your profitability because you're underestimating your expenses. Don't be that person. Then I got 10% for my property management expenses. I got 5% for my vacancy expenses because that property is always empty at some point. So in F19, if I buy this property for 25% down, my down payment is going to be equal to B4, which is my asking price, times my down payment percentage of 25%. So I'll be putting 45 grand down. In K6, my financing amount, that's going to be 135 grand because that's based off of B4, which is my purchase price minus my down payment of 45 grand. So it's 135. I'm using 7.5% for my interest rate right now for my assumptions. And if those factors hold true, right? I rent out a 4-bedroom for $1,400. That'd be negative 118, 119 a month. And that cash and cash return number is going to be negative 2.67. Now the purchase price for this property is $180,000 with a $4,800 rehab, 25% down, 7.5% interest rate. Now, even if you think you can make $1,800 on this property, right? That would still make it $181, right? So you can write that down to yourself, $1,800. You'll be cash flowing positive now, $181. That's a 4.1% return with a $180,000 rehab, $4,800, 25% down, 7.5% interest rate. And that's the difference between knowing your market and not knowing your market, right? If you only base off of that, which I typically do, right? Because I've looked at this market every single day, so I have a pretty good pulse on what the rents are going in this market. But you assume right away $1,800, man, that's a huge difference in losing money and making money. Because check this out, right? If you go look up HUD FMR and you pull up the rent ceiling, right, by clicking on first link, going to click on access to small area FMRs, click on look up FY 2025 small area FMRs, click on your state, click on your county. This is properties in Jefferson County. In 35020, your rent ceiling for a 4-bedroom is only $1,580, and that includes utilities. So if you don't include utilities, you have to back out utility allowances from this number. So even if I give you the best case number, right? Your best case number is $1,580, and I haven't even put in your utility expenses in here yet. You only be able to cash flow break even, $1,580. So realistically, $1,800 is not a realistic number because you can't exceed the rent ceiling that's allowed by the housing authority, right? Only in rare cases, like very high standard living cities such as Boston, New York, do they have payment standards where they exceed the SAFMR. That usually doesn't happen. So that's one of the scenarios I want to go through with you today. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is let's go back to 1,400 as my rent assumption. What purchase price do I need to buy this property for me to yield a 10% cash on cash return? See what happens to E9. I lower my rent to 1,400, and then I lowered my purchase price to 105 grand, and that's how I can get to a 10% return. Because now I can cash flow by assuming $1,400 in rent, $275 a month. That's a 10% return if I buy for 105. Assuming everything else stays constant with a $4,800 rehab and a 7.5% interest rate. Now, I'm not saying 10% is a magical number. This is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. I'm just simply showing you all how to make this work. How do you update the inputs so that you can take emotions out of the deal and put in the right inputs that allows you to get to your own target criteria, right? Because some people might not care about cash flow. If they buy $1 million home and sell in California and they appreciate 5% every single year, that's all they care about. That's all they care about. Because they're making 50 grand a year. They don't care about $200 of cash flow a month. But that's to each their own. That's why you got to talk to your own investment advisors and understand why are you pursuing the strategy? How are you diversifying your portfolio? How are you adjusting? Why am I doing this percentage of my portfolio or my investments towards cash flow? How am I allocating this percentage of my investments towards appreciation? You have to balance your entire portfolio. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is, well, what happens if interest rates drop to 6%, right? That's exactly what we're talking about, right? If the administration focuses on getting your 10-year yield down, right? Maybe because they're heavily real estate focused. Now, all of a sudden, you might be willing to pay 118 grand and still achieve your target return of 10%, right? So just with interest rate dropping 1.5 points, something else, everything stay constant, you're now able to pay $13,000 more, assuming everything else stayed the same, because now you're still able to cash flow 9.7% return, $295 a month. with a $1,400 rent. And that's a practice I want you to go through. So my hope is this. I hope you copy my homework today, right? Analyze the same deal, analyze today. 1031 Eastern Valley Road just came on the listing 22 hours ago. Using the same spreadsheet, build your own compare sales list. For the same spreadsheet, just go to affordablehousing.io, go to the Get Deal Analysis tool, plug in your name, email, your phone number. That's the fastest way for you to copy the spreadsheet. I didn't make the spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few other folks, right? I modified, I tweaked it so that I can analyze these deals as fast as possible. And my goal is that you start your own YouTube channel, right? Because at some point, someone's going to ask you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? And you can say, hey, I think this is a deal because I've been looking at properties for the past 506 days. Like, that gave you some confidence that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. Hey, thank you everybody for caring about affordable housing. Thank you so much for all your support. We just got featured on Business Insider again for the 6th time. Could not appreciate you all so much. Thank you for sharing the podcast with your family, your friends. Thank you for sticking with me. I read every single comment. Thank you so much for just hanging in there with me. Without people like you, I would have never had the home I grew up in. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 507. Have a great day, everybody. Spend some quality time today with your family and friends. So that's what life is all about. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 507.